Hello there, my very good friends. Andy here from WhatCulture Wrestling. And now that we are, 6 days removed from WrestleMania 41, I thought it would be a nice time to kind of put a bow on all our post-WrestleMania coverage and sit down with you today and have a nice little discussion about the vibes coming out of the biggest wrestling event of the year, because the energy and the mood and the feeling coming out of WrestleMania 41 was a lot different to how it felt coming out of WrestleMania 40. Of course, 40 XL, whatever you want to call it, in Philadelphia was one of the big feel-good events, thanks primarily to the main event, Cody Rhodes finishing the story against Roman Reigns in a universally well-received amongst WWE fans main event. It was a very bombastic and loud and some might say overbooked, but I would use that word too, but in a good way. Main event with multiple interferences, people cancelling each other out, some of the biggest stars in the history of the sport, leading ultimately to the grandest babyface triumph, and just a really good feeling overall coming out of WrestleMania. If you were in the building and you were rooting for Cody Rhodes, which was probably 99% of the people there, you left that show on a high. It was impossible not to feel good about WWE in general. The buzz around the company was peaking at that stage, and everybody was having a good time. There was no question that the good times were set to continue. Everyone was happy, everyone was buzzing, everyone was looking forward to the future. WrestleMania 41, it's a little bit different. While in the building, these experiences are often a little bit different to watching at home and all of that stuff. I think both perspectives are equally valid. And John Cena's victory over Cody Rhodes, 1 year after Cody won the belt, Cena becoming a 17-time world champion, has split opinion down the middle. There were a lot of people who were not happy with the ending to that show, and it's left a bit of a foul taste in the mouth. Now, these foul tastes are easily forgotten. WWE could easily turn around a couple of really great shows in a row, and people will move on. What you'll have people saying, "See, I told you so, it was good in the first place," and then you'll have other people going, "Okay, well, I didn't really enjoy WrestleMania, but it's been pretty good since then." But what's happened here is we had this situation where a lot of people expected The Rock to show up, given his involvement in John Cena's heel turn at Elimination Chamber, and he hasn't been around since, which is kind of weird. But it is Dwayne. He does what he wants. He didn't show up. Travis Scott showed up at 8, one of the meanest crossroads of all time. And that kind of helped facilitate John Cena's win, becoming a 17-time world champion now. It was interesting to come out of the building. It was definitely a flatter atmosphere than WrestleMania 40, and definitely not one that left me or some of the people around me buzzing for the future. And then when you hop online, which is often where the most negative opinions are amplified and they come across stronger, it was certainly even louder on this situation. So I think it leaves WWE in a really interesting spot, and I think WrestleMania 41 actually tells us quite a lot about the company's future if you kind of drift and dive through the weeds, the onion layer, pick it apart, cut it up, it'll make you cry. It's all good. But even night one, right, that drew some flack as well, and understandably so. There was some matches on the show that didn't necessarily feel WrestleMania sized. The New Day versus the War Raiders being the most obvious one of those. There was the opening match, Gunther versus Jey Uso. Not the most popular decision in the world to have Jey Uso tap Gunther out. Although in the building, like I said in my Things We Learned Attending Live video, the reaction wasn't insanely positive. Everyone was fired up for this. The wider fan base, and the majority of people who are watching the show are doing so on a screen. They're not there. There's only 60,000 people there. That's a lot of people, but you know what I mean. What I'm trying to say is, amongst people who weren't in the building, the reaction wasn't entirely positive, and hey, that's the majority of the audience. Their stance is valid. I personally disagree with it. I think the guy is super fun, and he's not the best wrestler in the world, Jay, but the fact of the matter is that his win has, it just rubbed a few people the wrong way. So and then things as well, like Ray Phoenix losing like 3 weeks into his run. I feel like if you wanted to put Grande Americano over someone, maybe you should have used someone else. That would have probably been a better choice. And then, things that weren't necessarily in WWE's control, like Charlotte versus Tiffany, had a few clunky moments here and there. The main event swung everything around. It was a really well done bit of business. But on the whole, night one left a bit of a not necessarily like raging, angry, foul, this sucks kind of opinion. But yeah, mid was probably the prevailing reaction from a lot of people. Although I had a good time at the show, personally, myself. But you always do when you're in the building and you kind of get into the swing of things. Night 2 started incredibly well with the women's triple threat. Drew versus Damian Priest, the Intercontinental title match. It was on a roll. It was on an absolute roll. I would say the first half of that show was some of the best modern WWE programming. I don't even think I need to attach modern to that. It was just great. It was absolutely fantastic. The momentum was flowing. I think Rhea versus Bianca versus Io was one of the best WrestleMania openers of all time. I do have a preference for Brett and Owen, but it was fantastic. I can't fault it in any way whatsoever. But as the show progressed, things definitely got a little bit farty. They got a little bit divisive amongst the fans, online and present there at the show. Logan Paul versus AJ Styles. What a flat match that was. AJ doesn't have the best WrestleMania record in the world when it comes to delivering, which is mental because he's an all-timer. And Logan Paul, for a lot of people, I think the ride has just come to an end, man. Like, he hasn't really developed since he arrived. The appeal of him being this celebrity who can do amazing athletic feats has worn off because he's like 4 years into this now. And at this stage, he's just kind of a guy. He's just kind of a basic, cocky, mid-card heel. And yeah, he's a tremendous athlete and he's got some cool moves or whatever, but there's not much space between the moves. And this match fell short of a lot of expectations, even those that weren't particularly high. Some people didn't like the Becky Lynch return to team with Lyra Valkyria to win the women's tag team titles from the Judgment Day. Obviously, this came at Bayley's expense. This was a creative decision. Bayley was put into the match. She was then written off due to an injury angle. Becky came in. They won the belts in about 8-9 minutes. Not universally popular, although Becky gets a tremendous pop because we haven't seen her in a year. And I thought it was pretty cool myself, personally. She's got some haters out there, and it did rub a certain portion of the fan base the wrong way that she came back in and won the title. Look, she's to me, I disagree with that stance. She's a massive star, I think, and she rocks. Does it suck that Bayley lost a WrestleMania spot? Yeah, absolutely. She's good too. But if they could use that as fuel to turn Bayley into a full-on heel, maybe that'll be some gold that we can get from this. But the fact is that it did annoy some people. And then, we can also talk, if you want, about the PR week that WWE had leading into the show. Just more, I can't fathom what they were thinking with a lot of these moves, right? So things like John Cena openly praising Vince McMahon in an interview, and it's like, okay, yeah, that might be your truth, John, but this guy's been accused of some pretty monstrous things, so you can't just say, oh, I mean no harm to the accusers and the victims, but I love this guy, blah 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 blah. Think before you speak. He's usually a pretty savvy operator, but it's easy to see why people would be annoyed by that. You have things like Triple H and Nick Khan getting annoyed at internet fans and all of this stuff. And then on the night, you have a crazy PR situation where Steve Austin crashes his ATV into the barricade, a fan falls over, and that causes a bit of a problem. Nick Khan was over there like a shot because he understood that this was a particularly risky situation. And obviously that was a complete accident, right? And it's not WWE's fault necessarily, but it is another thing that kind of adds to this growing pile of slight discontent that we're talking about here today, coming out of WrestleMania 41. And what this whole situation, we haven't barely talked about the main event, have we? Cody and Cena and Travis Scott and the vibes coming out of that. What a far removed thing that was from Cody's celebratory win. And yeah, look, it should feel like a bit of a bum note. The heel won, right? The villain won, all of that stuff. But it could have been more bombastic, dynamic. It could have been more exciting. What we got was one rundown from a rapper, one run out from a rapper who got beaten up, a belt shot, a nut shot, John Cena begging off, and the ref bump, all that stuff, and then the finish. And flatly, John Cena becomes the 17-time world champion with no post-match whatsoever, just him picking up the belt, putting it on backwards and walking away. The match up to that point, until the shenanigans, I was actually really enjoying. I thought it was really old school. It felt like a 1982 WWF Madison Square Garden main event, and I say that as a compliment. But it's unquestionable that the result of this match has left a lot of people super annoyed. If you go and read a review of this show, I mean, any time over the past 6 days or so, you will see people talking about the ending and how they didn't really enjoy it. So does it fit the idea of John Cena, you get nothing, I'm ruining wrestling? Yeah, it does, but that should still be an enjoyable viewing experience. It was bad on purpose, actually, is not something that I think is a particularly engaging viewpoint. Bad on purpose is what drives people away, ultimately. Now, look, WWE's they're basically invincible in terms of their market position, right? They are making money hand over fist. They're drawing just huge amounts of people to these shows, and even when they're not drawing as many as the year before, the inflated crazy ticket prices mean that they're making huge gates off of all of these, so they're not necessarily in any trouble. But again, we could actually talk about these ticket prices as a part of this growing PR snowball. What's happening these days when you're charging like a $250 get-in price to sit in the nosebleeds for WrestleMania, you're driving normal, ordinary, working class people out of attending these shows. It becomes prohibitively expensive, and that's just another thing that makes fans who've supported this thing all their life go, hold on a minute, if I want to go to the show with my partner and my children, this is going to cost me 4 figures. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. At the end of the day, it is it's a capitalist enterprise. Their primary goal is to make money, but that's so cold and soulless and such a woeful way to view wrestling if you're a fan. You shouldn't necessarily care about any of that. I don't care about how much money wrestling companies make, as long as it's enough to survive so that I can still watch them. I don't want to have to pay, a mortgage to go and attend these events. So it's probably the same for a lot of you guys out there as well. So yeah, basically what we have at the moment, right, is a company that still has a lot of goodwill, right? And Triple H has done a tremendous job of giving his audience what it wants throughout his tenure as WWE's head booker. But we're now in the first real situation where he, as a booker, needs to tread carefully. We are now in a situation where the overwhelming reaction to a move has not been entirely positive. You could argue WrestleMania 39, but I think a lot of people still had faith that next year Cody would come back and win the belt, even if he didn't then. Now, it's kind of harder to see that path forward, that path of positivity. Look, they've re-signed a bunch of cool people, Rusev, Aleister Black, a bunch of others. They've probably got a bunch in the chamber. If they want to do Cody Rhodes versus The Rock, it is still right there. They still have the option to do that. John Cena as a heel world champion has bags of potential. We've never seen that before, and there's a lot of other good things. So this isn't me coming here and saying WWE is doomed or anything like that. That would be complete nonsense. It's me saying that this is the first proper prolonged negative storm of perception and PR that the company has had since Vince left and Triple H took over as booker. We'll now see what this company is truly made of when it comes to weathering these periods. They've made a bunch of unpopular moves lately. They've made some popular ones, but they've definitely made some really unpopular ones too. And they need to get the next few steps right. If this I don't want to. If I say boom period, it makes it sound like I think that's coming to an end. I don't. But if they want to turn the perception back to their side, I guess they need to tread carefully, and they need to be cognizant of the reactions that they received at WrestleMania 41 and in the aftermath, and they need to go, okay, here's what worked, here's what didn't work. Let's pivot back towards stuff that we know this audience is going to truly care for. That doesn't mean going on Twitter and picking up on every fringe movement and all that stuff, but it does mean listening to your wider audience, people in the buildings as well, the ticket buying public, people watching at home, everybody. They all matter because they are the people who are buying the tickets. And if you get into a period like you did under Vince McMahon, where it feels like your energy, your investment is not being rewarded, that's when you start to enter dicey waters. So hey, thank you for joining me for this breakdown of WWE's situation after WrestleMania and what the company's future might look like heading into the next round of programming. Hope you're having a great day, and you should check out the video that's on your screen right now I've got my hands all wrong, because I think you're really going to enjoy it too. Bye.